and welcome back to another video. Hopefully everybody is doing well today. I wanted to do a sit down and just chit chat video because, well, it's easy. One, it's definitely one of the easier videos that I can do. And two, I honestly really do enjoy these videos where I can kind of just sit down and talk to the camera. So that's what you're getting today. And I was going to sit down and talk to you about my nursing experience. So I've had a lot of comments on YouTube, people reaching out asking me what my background is. And so I thought I would just make a video dedicated to that and kind of telling you my nursing background, including my school and my work, and just kind of show you my history and where I'm at now. So I went to Oakland University. It's a local university here. It's a really good school. I went there for an accelerated nursing program. So I had already gone to Oakland University and got my first bachelor's degree there in psychology. And during my fourth year is when I completed all my prerequisites to get into the nursing program. And I was accepted. They said like a 3.75 to get accepted into Oakland University's nursing program. And I think I had like a 3.8. So I really worked really hard. You had to do like organic chemistry and some other stuff that I think I blocked out because of PTSD. But yes, I had like a lot of those prereqs that I did. So while I was finishing up that first degree of psych, I was also busting out those nursing prereqs, got accepted. I still remember getting accepted, like the letter. And a couple weeks after I was accepted to nursing school, I found out I was pregnant with my first son. So I started, I think when my son was like 8 months old. And I went to nursing school and it was full time. It was Monday through Friday, like 9 to 5. And you couldn't work. It was a hard year, right? Like I was busting my butt and also trying to raise a baby. Right before I had even taken the NCLEX, so I didn't know if I passed, I went to a career fair and I knew in my heart of heart what I wanted was to work in the ER. My preceptorship, so like my last clinical for nursing school, I did in an ER. I fell in love with it. I was so excited. I loved, the variety of cases, the trauma, that kind of stuff really just excited me. I had kind of like an adrenaline rush with it. And I knew I wanted to go into the ER as a new grad, but everyone was like, no, you should start med-surg. I did not enjoy med-surg, and I knew that that was not what was right for me, but I just wanted a job really bad. I was ready to work as a nurse. So I went to this career fair. There was a table that you could go sit at for the ER. And I saw that table and I thought, man, should I just do it? I decided to go over there. The manager was super cool and he decided to take a chance on me. Anyway, so I worked there for 4 years and I loved the ER. Absolutely loved it. You do get burnout, but you can come back from it. It goes in waves. That's why it's so great that it's 3 12s and then you're off for 4 because you need that like recoup time. It goes in waves. Anyone that works in medicine probably understands that. Then COVID happened, and honestly that did kind of change things for me, and that sucks, but that's the reality of it. We were very, very hard hit in our ER. Overnight it turned into like a COVID dumping ground. I know that was for a lot of places. It was just, it was a little traumatic. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, once the dust settled and we kind of got like our footings and we knew what the heck kind of was going on, it wasn't as scary, but initially it was really freaking scary because everybody was like coming in with like the lowest pulse ox numbers that we've ever seen and really just like hypoxic and respiratory distress. People were really, really sick and we did not know what the heck was going on. We didn't know what to do. Obviously, we were like intubating everybody and, super contagious. We just had no idea. It was just scary. It was a scary time. You want to come to work and do your job and help out, but you also don't want to get sick and die or bring it home to your family. And so I definitely went through all of those emotions. It was a culture shock. I don't know. I remember feeling like walking around in my little moon suit, like, I just remember the sounds of it. And it was massive on me because I'm not a big person. I'm a small person. And I just remember feeling like, oh my God, am I in a twilight zone right now? We were doing like the curbside screening. We were pulling people out of cars, like doing CPR in the streets. Everybody was on a ventilator. People on ventilators were in the hallways. It turned into insanity. And on top of it, you have to wear all of this PPE and then they don't have enough PPE. And then all of a sudden there's fights about that. I remember we had, what was it? It was a car company because we had a lot of donated supplies. There was a car company, it was like GM or something. They donated like their old airbag supplies or like their airbag material for gowns. So that is some thick material and long. So I'd bunch it up and tie it up here and sweating buckets. Like I would be sweating so much. I was probably the skinniest I'd ever been during this time. One, because of stress. Two, because I was sweating all the time because that PPE, oh my gosh, yeah, it was a rough time. So I did 11 months in the ER during the COVID time. and I said bye. It was really bittersweet. I was so burned out though. I dreaded going to work, absolutely dreaded it. I didn't feel like I was myself anymore. I was anxious and not very nice, and I just wasn't a good nurse at that time. I don't know. It got to my head. That really burned me out. It was too bad, but it happened. So I left the hospital. I went and did some home health care for like a month, right? No offense to anyone that does home health care. It was so much work. I loved the patients. Like, that part was so cool. You go sit down with the patients in their homes. And at first I thought I was going to be kind of creeped out by it, but it turned out to be really sweet, and you get to know them and you have like food with them. But for the pay and the amount of work, because you're driving to and from places, the charting was like all at home, and then you had to upload it onto the computer, and it was a ton, and you had to make sure you stayed updated on their supplies. It ended up being so much work for the pay. It was a month in, and I said, whoa, I realized right away that it was not what I had bargained for. So I had applied during like the previous week, when I knew that I would be leaving this, to a contingent position back at my same hospital. And I got a call, and they wanted to hire me for the contingent position for the float pool. So if you're not familiar with the float pool, they can kind of put you in different areas throughout the hospital wherever you're needed. There's usually a pay increase with it because you have to be flexible. And because I was contingent status and not taking health care, I also had a pay increase with that. And I totally took it. I was so excited. So I think when I was working in the ER, I was making like $31 or something, not very much money now looking back. When I took the contingent float pool position, they bumped me up to $41.80. And so I was super excited about that. And they had you like in a couple different like cohorts, kind of, you could go like the critical care path, or you could go like more like the med surge path. And I knew that I still wanted to do critical care. So I could be floated either to the ICU, the ER, so the same ER that I had worked, or PCU. At this time, so this is still COVID time, remember, it was only a month later that I came back to the hospital. I wasn't ready to leave, I guess. So during this time, it was still COVID time, and our ICU was bare bones, bare staff. We had no staff in our ICU. It was either agency nurses, like travel nurses, or float pool nurses. There was some regular staff there, but it was really, really, really bare bones. And that's kind of scary because it was really sick patients at this time. I mean, it was essentially like a COVID ICU. And so that is where I was floated all of the time because they had no staff. PCU was not as well staffed either, but they needed to have ICU to be able to at least have 12 beds essentially available. And it's a 2-to-1 ratio. So you have 2 patients per 1 nurse, because the ER was getting really backed up, which I knew because I'd just been there, with a bunch of ICU holds. Oh my God, that was a nightmare. And I actually learned that I really liked the ICU. The one issue that I had was that was so bare bones staff that it was scary sometimes. We'd have like 1 tech for the entire floor sometimes, not even all the time. And then when patients started really like crumping, it was really hard to find like residents or physicians. They were also short-staffed. I actually know that they were. And their little nook when they were like charting and stuff was way away from the patients, which I still don't totally understand. In the ER, you were never alone. We were bumping, man. People were going back and forth down the hallways, people yelling here, people yelling there. In the ICU, everyone's dying in their rooms, and all the nurses are in their rooms trying to save their dying patients. There's no one bumping around the hallways, and the residents, I don't know where they were. So it got scary sometimes, really scary sometimes. And we would try to divvy up the patients, like, so if you had one that was circling the drain, maybe you have another one that's not like totally circling the drain, but just like kind of circling the drain. One day in particular, I had 2 patients that just wanted to die. They were both COVID patients, and it was really a horrible, horrible shift. At this point, we had respirators. You are like Darth Vader in there, and it's hard to breathe. Those were the days. And so, yeah, I mean, it was just a time. It was a time to work in healthcare. I can't even put into words. I mean, obviously, we're still in COVID, but it's not the same, and God willing, it will never be the same. Anyway, during this time, I finished my master's. Oh, I skipped over that. So the year before COVID started, that year, is when I started my first year of grad school. And so I was still working in the ER. I did it in my first year. It was at University of Cincinnati. It was their online program. So the first year is all online. I did it full time. And then the second year is all clinical. And you have to find your placements. And obviously it is in person, it's clinical. I never had to do like online clinical, not without busting my butt trying to get preceptors because my school didn't set them up. And also COVID had just started. So I was extremely fortunate to even get a clinical placement because I know so many people that had to delay their graduating because they weren't able to get clinicals. Fortunately for me, one of the ER attending physicians that I worked with, he had partnership in a local urgent care. And so that is where I got my first clinical. This was May 2020. So, March 2020 was when it hit the fan. So it was really fresh into COVID. Kind of changed my experience, and I know a lot of people's experience because during this time especially, we were a testing COVID site. And so my first clinical at the urgent care was just 95% COVID. That actually is how I also got my first job as a nurse practitioner. So I finished my year of clinicals, passed my boards, started YouTube randomly because I'm a little weird, but it's fine. But then that's how I got my job at the urgent care. It was the same urgent care that I precepted at. Well, actually it's a different location, but it's owned by the same people. And so I've been working at this urgent care for a year and a half now. I love it. Urgent care, ER is definitely my niche. It just comes really naturally to me. I like to rule out big problems. I don't want to deal with chronic stuff, and that's no offense to anybody. I really just like acute care medicine. So yeah, that's where I've been. That's what I've done as far as my nursing experience. I love to learn things every day, and I like to share them on the internet. That's why you're here, I'm sure. So hopefully you enjoyed my little sit down and chit chat with you guys. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out, so I appreciate it. Don't forget to learn something new every day. And until next time, I wish you guys nothing but the best. Okay, bye.
Living life every day, late at night, not okay. All I want